Today, we are going to break down one of the most powerful books on human relations ever written, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. We're going to distill the absolute core wisdom that has, no joke, changed lives for decades. So let's dive right in.
You've been there, right? It's a frustration we've all felt. You know you're right, you've got all the facts, but the more you push, the more the other person just digs in their heels. Why does that happen? Well, the answer is surprisingly simple, and it's really the key to everything we're about to cover.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the foundational secret, then we'll uncover this master key principle that unlocks pretty much all human interaction. And from there, we'll get into 3 super practical applications: how to connect, how to persuade, and how to lead. And finally, we'll wrap it all up as your new superpower.
Okay, let's get right to the heart of it, the secret to influence. And it all comes down to understanding this fundamental, kind of weird paradox in how we all deal with each other.
You see, we think that logic and criticism should work. I mean, it makes sense, right? But they almost never do. And that's because people aren't creatures of logic. We're creatures of emotion, driven by ego and pride. Criticizing someone doesn't magically make them change their mind. It just puts them on the defensive and, frankly, makes them resent you. So the problem isn't our argument, it's our entire approach.
So, if criticizing and arguing doesn't work, what does? Well, this brings us to the single most important idea in the entire book, what I like to call the master key principle. And here it is. The deepest, most powerful craving in human nature is the desire to be important. That's it. It's what drives people to write epic novels, to build massive companies, even to climb the highest mountains. It's this deep, deep hunger for recognition and appreciation. And if you can learn to satisfy this hunger in other people, you will hold an incredible amount of influence.
So, here's the crucial point. You have to shift your mindset. You have to stop thinking about what you want and start genuinely looking for the good in the person standing right in front of you. Adopting this Emerson quote as your own little mantra, it changes everything. It forces you to find something you can genuinely appreciate in everyone, which is the very first step to making them feel important.
All right, so let's move on to our first practical application and see how this all built. How do you use this master key to make people genuinely, truly like you, almost instantly?
Carnegie boils it down to 3 beautifully simple actions. It almost sounds too simple. First, you smile. Second, you remember and you use their name. And third, you become a genuinely good listener. That's it. But trust me, the effect is absolutely profound.
Okay, take William Steinhardt, a New York stockbroker who was known for being this perpetually grumpy, stern guy. On Carnegie's advice, he tried a little experiment. He just decided to smile more. He smiled at his wife, at the doorman, the cashier at the grocery store. And the result? People started smiling back. He found more happiness at home in 2 months than in the entire previous year. And at work, complaints became easier to handle, which actually led to more revenue. A smile is a simple message that just says, "I like you. You make me happy."
And think about the power of a name. When you forget someone's name, it kind of sends the message, "I don't really care enough about you to remember." But using their name, wow, that's a subtle but incredibly powerful compliment. It singles them out, it validates their identity, and it makes them feel seen and important.
This story perfectly illustrates that final step. Carnegie once sat with a botanist at a dinner party, and he was so fascinated by the guy that he just listened for hours, totally captivated. Later, the botanist told the host what an amazing conversationalist Carnegie was. And here's the kicker. Carnegie had barely said a word. The secret is that being a good listener isn't about what you say, it's about encouraging other people to talk about themselves, which is, after all, everyone's favorite subject.
Okay, so we know how to connect. But what about when we disagree? Let's tackle that second application. How to win people over to your way of thinking without creating a big fight.
Our natural instinct when someone disagrees with us is to fight fire with fire. We argue, we point out all their flaws, we basically say, "You're wrong." But look at the contrast here. The Carnegie way is to do the exact opposite. You literally can't win an argument, because even if you win on points, you've hurt the other person's pride and they'll resent you for it. So you've still lost. The only way to truly win is to just avoid the argument in the first place.
This is one of my absolute favorite stories from the book. Carnegie was caught walking his little dog Rex without a leash by the same police officer twice. The second time, before the officer could even get a word out, Carnegie immediately jumps in and admits how wrong he was, calling himself guilty, very, very guilty. And this completely disarmed the officer.
Since Carnegie had already criticized himself, the officer's desire to feel important could only be satisfied by being generous and forgiving him. So if you're wrong, just admit it, quickly and with feeling.
All right, now for our final application, which, let's be honest, is probably the most difficult one. How do you change people's behavior, whether you're a parent, a manager, a leader, without causing offense or resentment?
The key here is all in the subtlety of your language. We've all heard that anything that comes before the word but just doesn't count, right? Saying, you did a great job, but just erases the praise. But if you change it to, you did a great job, and if we focus on this, it'll be even better, well, that's encouraging. It's a team effort. And similarly, instead of direct criticism, try talking about your own mistakes first. It shows you're human and makes the other person way more receptive.
A hiring manager used to struggle with super nervous interviewees who just couldn't express themselves. So he started his interviews by telling them his own embarrassing story of a time he totally blanked on a simple question and couldn't even name Facebook. The students would laugh, they'd relax, and they'd feel comfortable because he had just shown them that he was human too. Admitting your own mistakes first is a total game changer.
And how do you really get your ideas to land? You have to dramatize them. An intern had to give a final presentation. Instead of just listing his boring, routine tasks, he started by saying his internship saved the company $133,000. Boom! Instantly, every single manager in that room was leaning forward, listening intently. He translated his work into a result that mattered. It wasn't about lying, it was about framing the truth in a vivid, interesting way.
Okay, so we've covered the core principle and its three main applications. Let's bring it all together and frame this whole thing as the new superpower you can literally start using today.
So let's just put it all together. The master key, the foundation of everything, is to always, always remember that deep human craving to feel important. And from that one single principle, everything else just flows. You connect with people by smiling, using their names, and really listening. You persuade by avoiding arguments and being quick to admit when you're wrong. And you lead by starting with praise and sharing your own mistakes first. It really is that straightforward.
And this, right here, is the most important takeaway of all. These principles aren't about manipulation. They aren't just little tricks to get what you want. They are a genuine philosophy. It's about fundamentally shifting your focus from yourself to others, actively looking for their good points and making them feel valued. Because when you do that, you not only bring out the best in them, you bring out the best in yourself.
So, the knowledge is yours now. The key is in your hand. The only question left is, which one of these powerful, simple ideas are you going to put into practice first? Think about one interaction you're going to have today and decide on one thing you'll try. Thanks for joining me.